for joining us, and thanks for spending your time. I know it's valuable. I love this topic, but I do want to say before we get started that I would love for people to ask questions throughout the presentation. I have a little PowerPoint to get us started. So I really want to keep it open, and actually right now I'd like to know if any of you have any things that you want me to address about this topic. I feel like we're talking about breakfast all the time, and we really want to have a cancer-fighting breakfast. So we have some great ideas for you guys today. Are there any specific questions that people would like for me to address during our presentation today? If you want, you can raise your hand, you can ask in the chat, you can just unmute and ask me right away. Thanks again for joining us. Anybody have any questions that they want me to address? I see lots of faces in there, everybody's little circles, so thanks so much for coming. We're also recording this if you have questions later or if you want to rewatch some of the ideas. After the presentation, I have a couple of recipe ideas, and you may have seen those on the beginning when you were kind of looking at the shot of we have some kind of different breakfast ideas to show you. So anyone have any questions right off the bat? Or, how you came to join us or anything like that. Feel free to unmute and just jump right in.
I have one question. I've
go ahead, Pam.
changed over to eating, oatmeal in the morning and the steel cut and healthier thing with blueberries. But I'm allergic to eggs, and a lot of these breakfast things are eggs. Otherwise, you're going into like pancakes and things you don't want to be doing every day. So if you could kind of address that, where everything isn't eggs, or it's actually the egg whites I'm allergic to, but
okay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that becomes a problem with me with breakfast.
Yeah, I love that you threw that out there, and we do have a couple of ideas that have eggs in them, but we have some that don't. And I was just talking to somebody this morning about an English breakfast that has baked beans for breakfast. Yum. That's a great way. Beans and toast is one of their big breakfasts. So I think a lot of times we don't even think about that, but there are definitely ways to do breakfast without having eggs. Oatmeal is a great idea too. I like it when we make it with milk. Yeah, I love that. Any other questions or any other things that you guys would like for me to address? I love that you told me that, Pam, because now I can make sure to include that. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, no problem. Well, no problem. If you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. I have a PowerPoint that we are, let's see if we can pull that up. Do we have that already on here?
Yeah, it should be in there.
Okay.
While we're sharing here.
Okay. Ashley's just going to pull up the PowerPoint real quick for us, and there we go. Perfect. All right, and can everyone hear me okay? There we go, perfect. Thanks, Ashley. Awesome. Ashley's great, just so you know. She works here at Living Well, and she's wonderful. She helps with all of our technology, and that's good. Then we can focus on nutrition. So, cancer fighting breakfast. I have just a couple of slides to give us some information. It's not a long PowerPoint, but I think sometimes it's good to have some visuals to give us some ideas. So many of you know, if you've been to any of our other classes, that we talk about the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle, which is more chicken and fish, more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains if possible, focusing in on the healthy fats like avocado, peanut butter. I love including peanut butter at breakfast. So those of you that can't do eggs, that's a great idea. And then low-fat dairy. So that's all part of the Mediterranean diet, and you can kind of see the pyramid here. It's kind of a newer pyramid, but also we want to make sure that we have activity. So a lot of times if we're not super hungry at breakfast, it's because we're either not getting enough activity or we may be eating more at that dinner time, which is a lot of us. And so we want to kind of balance that out. We want to have some activity in the Mediterranean lifestyle, get some of these fruits and vegetables in, and we're going to talk about that as well. But also protein. So that's really important at that breakfast time. And that's what we end up spending a lot of time talking about at the Cancer Center. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the pillars of breakfast. What is the most important thing about breakfast? We want to make sure that we're getting protein, as I mentioned. If we can, including fruits and vegetables. Oh, Irene, yeah, good. I see that you have a question about why are whole grains in moderation. Well, for the most part.
I found this on the web where I have a question about why are whole grains in moderation. Check it out.
So for the most part, we know that that was a little technology over there. So, so for the most part, Americans are kind of overdoing it with carbs a little bit. So that's why we say whole grains in moderation. It's fine to have carbohydrate foods, but we don't want that to be our whole diet, right? We want to make sure that we are having them in moderation. So really good question. We don't talk about specific amounts of carbs later in the presentation, so I might just give you an example. For an 1,800 calorie diet, that would mean maybe 6 or 7 servings of carbs, which is about 15 grams per serving if you're looking at a food label. So that would mean 3/4 of a cup of cereal at breakfast, 1 or 2 slices of bread at lunch, and then a cup of rice or pasta. So some people say, well, that seems like a lot of carbs. But if you have a granola bar, you need to take away 1 of your slices of bread. Or if you're having popcorn, even though that's a whole grain, then you would want to take away maybe a portion of the rice. So it's really not a lot of carbs that we're doing. And most of us, what the data shows is that we're usually having a little bit more. Does that answer your question? There's nothing wrong with having whole grains. We just don't want to overdo it. Okay, I'm hoping that answered, but please let me know if you need more explanation. So we want to try to fit in protein, as I mentioned, at breakfast, but also fruits and vegetables. So, a lot of times people think about throwing in berries and yogurt and things like that. We're going to talk about some more of those ideas. And then grains. We're going to talk about some unusual ways to use grains, but we know of oatmeal and that kind of thing. And then dairy, if possible, because that's going to really give us that bone health. It's going to give us a little bit more protein. And we're finding out, especially as we mature over age 65, that we need a lot more protein than we thought, sometimes almost double to hold on to that lean body mass. So that's a really important component. So some tips are, trying fresh if you can, eating local, but it's not always necessary. You can still get good nutrition from frozen. So frozen berries, for example, they're taking those right from the field, flash freezing them, and that's helping them to maintain that good nutrition. So those are fine. Those are a good idea. All of these foods, these anti-inflammatory foods like the berries and broccoli, and today we have a recipe with spinach, those are going to help decrease risk of recurrence and decrease that chronic inflammation. So we're going to talk a little bit about websites and recipes, but you can go online. You can look at cookbooks. I like the library. They have great ideas for cookbooks there too. Don't forget about the Living Well website. We have a ton of recipes that we've been doing with all of our presenting and all of our classes. So it's the culinary nutrition section once you go to the website, and it's got a fount of information. And then we know kind of to get started, like we know eggs, we know oatmeal, whole grain cereal and yogurt. Those are things that we already know we can have for breakfast, but we don't always have them. So making a list and kind of planning out your breakfast, kind of like you do with dinner, it's a really good idea. And then just remembering to eat foods from the rainbow. So the more color, we just had a whole class on this at Facebook Live. If you want to check it out on the Living Well Facebook Live or just the Facebook page, it's on YouTube. Ashley's telling me. So go there and you can see we have a whole presentation about eating, fighting cancer with color. The more colorful your plate is, the more nutrition you're going to have. So really trying to focus in on those foods is a great idea. So the American Cancer Society guidelines say that we need to have at least 2.5 cups of vegetables a day. We want to try to sneak in those fruits as well. And so that's kind of a goal that we're kind of looking for. If you get back to that example diet of 1,800 calories, we usually say 3 servings of fruits about the size of my fist, not my husband's fist. So about a 1 cup serving. And then the same for vegetables, except for we would increase that to 5. Now, if it's cooked, 2.5 cups is about what we're trying for. So we really need to start figuring out ways to kind of fit those in. We want to look at our plate, and let me go back to this graphic. Do you see that little plate that's on the top there? It's half of the fruits being half of the plate being fruits and vegetables, 1/4 starch, 1/4 meat. So there again, we're kind of looking at the starch and seeing that we need to have that in moderation, but we still want to include it. It's okay to include it, and we do need those kinds of carbohydrates. We just don't want to overdo it. So having foods from a variety, having the rainbow is really good, and a healthy breakfast focuses on all those things that we talked about. So here is the American Heart Association, and they say that it's okay to have breakfast and have more than half of your calories can be at breakfast time. So a lot of times we're eating most of our meals at midday and dinner. So then we're not really spreading out those protein foods throughout the day. So it's important to kind of make sure that we are having a good breakfast, making sure that we have protein in there. And the guidelines right now are that it's probably okay to have about an egg a day. So that's not a problem. I think eggs have gotten kind of a bad rap. So how can we add in protein? There are some studies that are showing a larger amount of protein at breakfast helps with weight management. Now, certainly if you're in treatment and you're losing weight, then we really want to add in some more protein and we really want to spread it out. You can only absorb about 25 to 30 grams every several hours. So if you're just having like a big meal at dinner, or a lot of times, I don't want to be stereotypical, but a lot of times if someone wants to have a huge steak, they're still only absorbing probably 3 or 4 ounces of that protein at a time. You're still getting the calories, but you're not getting the protein. You'll just excrete it out. So it's really important to spread that out throughout the day. And so if you have about 30 grams for that meal, and maybe they're even suggesting 350 calories at that meal time, at that breakfast time, it's going to help with managing your weight. And why would that be? Well, probably because you're starting to spread out those calories. A lot of us are snacking in the evening because we have very small amount at maybe breakfast and lunch, and then at dinner we're starving and we want to eat everything in sight. So it's a good idea to spread out those calories, spread out those meals. Does anybody have any questions about that? I like this one where it's showing all the different colors, and it looks like kind of a rice bowl, so that's kind of cool. A lot of times we don't think about rice, but a lot of communities do have, some rice for breakfast with meat. It doesn't have to be our typical breakfast that we think of. So what about milk alternatives? So the reason why I brought the milk alternatives up is because a lot of people are having almond milk or oat milk or other milk alternatives. And for calcium, they could have added calcium, which is great. But a lot of times, if milk is our only protein at breakfast, like if we're having cereal and milk and that's our breakfast, If you're having one of these alternative milks, it may have 0 to 1 grams of protein. So cow's milk, for example, has about 8 grams of protein per 8-ounce serving. Soy milk is a good alternative. Excuse me. So it has about 7 grams. So if you're having soy milk, you're going to probably get your protein in. And, you know, some people can't drink cow's milk, and that's fine. So soy milk is a good alternative. If you are having almond milk or oat milk, which has much lower protein, just make sure you're getting protein in a different way at that breakfast time. So I think that's something for us to consider. The other thing is they're usually fortified with vitamins and minerals, and a lot of times they will have vitamin D, which is really important. And we know if you're low in vitamin D during treatment, that it does help to supplement. So it's important to, you know, just make sure that you have that checked. So check to see if you have vitamin D and calcium in your milk alternative. And then also, we want to kind of check on the added sugar. So the U.S. Dietary Guidelines suggest that we should have, or recommend, less than 6 grams of added sugar per serving. So that's a good rule of thumb to look at yogurt too, because a lot of times yogurt is having a lot of added sugar. There are a couple of ones out there called True Good. That's a little bit lower now. There's some that have fat substitutes. I like to recommend plain yogurt and adding in your own fruit, because then we know exactly how many carbs, how much sugar. Even if you just add a little bit of honey, it's probably going to be less than what you would purchase at the store. But some of the milk alternatives, like the almond milk, the vanilla ones, those are going to have a lot more added sugar too. And not that it's bad, but we want to know where our carbs are coming from. So if we have that vanilla milk, then maybe we don't want to have toast. We want to have more of like an egg, you know, omelet, or some other type of protein. We're going to talk about quinoa today, so we made a quinoa idea, so that'll be fun. And then if you're lactose intolerant or vegan, certainly it's so great that we have these alternatives now. So, you know, there are certainly ones out there. We just want to know where our nutrition is coming from so we can make sure to pinpoint what exactly is taking place and where we're getting them. So the American Cancer Society has some ideas on their website. And so I thought I would put a couple of them on here for you. Fruit smoothies. We have a lot of people that are adding fruit smoothies, and we just did a class where we did a smoothie bowl, and you can kind of see here it's almost like an artist project. And I think that's great. Like, why not make a smoothie bowl that looks beautiful, where you can be creative and you sit down to a lovely presentation, but also you're getting a variety of nutrients. So blueberries have a lot of good antioxidants. Bananas are going to give you that good potassium, and you've got that yogurt that's giving you the protein and vitamin D probably, and some calcium. So these are a great way to get in have a great breakfast. And there are no eggs. So if you're watching eggs, that's a great idea. Does anybody have smoothies or smoothie bowls? Is that something anybody has tried already? Okay, just checking. They are pretty interesting, and you can do a lot of different ingredients with those. So making a yogurt parfait, that was kind of the first picture in the presentation, showing yogurt and fruit, and you can even add granola. We have some recipes talking about homemade granola on the Living Well website, so check that out. But it's pretty easy to make. You can always, add in even just nuts, or if you're allergic to nuts, you could do seeds like pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds or even chia seeds. All of those, and layer them in different ways with different fruits, different yogurts. That's perfect. So that's a great idea. And then it says put it in a pretty glass. I like that. And you'll see when you'll see that we like to have it pretty when we're serving, because that makes it more fun. You're more mindful. So, even maybe get a placemat, even if you're eating by yourself. Have a placemat, sit at the table, enjoy your food, have a pretty glass for your yogurt parfait. Good question. Why does it say choose cold cereal? Well, I think what it's saying is that you can choose cold cereal. It doesn't have to be a fancy breakfast, but have breakfast. You know, that's the main thing there, because then we know we're getting adequate protein. So, you know, I love these questions. Keep them coming. Yeah, so cold cereal is still okay. In the winter months, you know, I think we talked about oatmeal in the beginning. Great. Grits are another idea where you can just make warm grits in the morning and you can have eggs with it or beans or whatever you want. It's kind of a corn type grain. And then adding melon chunks to cottage cheese and topping with cinnamon. So a lot of those anti-inflammatory foods are wonderful, and they're going to give us some of those qualities, even if we have a small amount. So I think if you could even add turmeric to your vegetables for an omelet, or if you're not having eggs, you could have an egg alternative too. That those do exist out there. But anyway, I hope that answers your cold cereal question. So we want to make it beautiful. We want to add color, and that's going to add nutrition. So I thought those ideas were good to kind of get us started. So a couple of other ideas are a breakfast burrito. So let's see here. Push, there we go. So a breakfast burrito is really easy to make on the weekends. And a lot of times I will put in eggs, I will put in veggies, I'll put in peppers. But you can do it with black beans, or you can do it with refried beans and black beans. You can get a whole grain tortilla and make 6 or 8 of them in a row, and then roll them up in tin foil, throw them in the freezer, and then you pull it out, unwrap, and you can either microwave or put them in the oven, warm them right up, or take them to work. Super easy. You just lay out all of your tortillas and make a big batch of them. So that's something you can do really easily and quick, and I like it because you can really tailor it to what you want. So if you want to put in red peppers, yellow peppers, those, by the way, are going to have double the vitamin C that green peppers would have. So if you're trying to get more iron, that will help with the absorption of the iron from the egg and also from the black beans. So burritos are a great idea. And I have salsa and cheese on here, so that's awesome too. And then how about making an omelet with vegetables? I think a lot of us will think about that. You can add some low-fat cheese, like a low-fat mozzarella, or Swiss would be a low-fat cheese as well. Serve salsa or avocado on the side, and you know, then you have a fabulous breakfast. You feel like you've gone to a hotel. You were asking about cold cereal. The warmer cereal, like whole grain oats, is a good idea. A lot of times people don't think about having peanut butter with their oatmeal, but it's a great way to add some more protein. It's very satisfying because it has a little bit of fat in there. You can add nuts as well. Walnuts are a part of that anti-inflammatory list. So anytime you can add those anti-inflammatory foods, broccoli, walnuts, turmeric, cinnamon, blueberries, even salmon. Why not have salmon for breakfast? A lot of times I tell people, have leftovers at breakfast time. It's not a problem. And I had somebody the other day that was eating like a tomato relish that they had made, and they were having it on crackers with some cheese. That's fine. A lot of cultures have a lot of different foods for breakfast, and I think we just need to be, expanding a little bit. Anybody have any questions so far?
Is this saying adding the peanut butter to the oatmeal, or is it a separate thing? I was having trouble figuring that out.
Yeah, no, peanut butter is great in oatmeal. And if you add the crunchy, you don't even have to add nuts for texture.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so adding the peanut butter is a great idea. I like it because if we're shooting for that 30 grams for breakfast, what does that mean exactly? So 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is going to have 7 grams of protein, and a medium egg is going to have 6. So to try to get to that, then oatmeal will probably have 2 to 3, depending on how much you're having. So to try to get to that 30 grams, now we don't all have to have 30 grams every day, right? But we do want to start to think, how can I do this? So say you have 2 eggs. If you have large eggs, then that's probably about 14 grams of protein. And then you have a piece of toast with peanut butter, you're probably getting closer to about 20 grams. A little bit of milk on the side, and you're getting even closer. So we really have to kind of think more in terms of more than one food to be able to fit in that protein. So that's why sneaking in the peanut butter and the oatmeal really helps.
Yeah, that would help.
Pardon?
Oh, I was saying that would help, especially since I'm the one who can't do eggs, so that would give some protein.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So some other ideas are the high protein pancakes or waffles. So you can buy those now. They have mixes, but you can also add in your own eggs. I work with some of the kids at the Proton Center, and sometimes the moms will be trying to figure out what to do, and the kids really like waffles or pancakes. So you can actually add just a couple more eggs, and it makes it a little bit more of a different consistency, but it still is giving you more protein. And you can add protein powder as well. So say you're not able to eat eggs, then you can do a protein powder, and that would be a great idea. I like to put peanut butter on my waffles, but you guys can tell that I'm a peanut butter person. So if you're just having kind of a high carb pancake or waffle with syrup, you're really setting yourself up to having blood sugar changes throughout the day. So having additional protein, if you have it with milk or you're having a side of an egg or even a turkey or a chicken sausage, that would be great too. Making sure you're getting some kind of protein will really help. We did a recipe today. I have an intern that is here helping me. It was really wonderful. So the recipe today is a quinoa bowl. Oh my gosh, how delicious. So quinoa is going to give you some protein as well. You can add beans. Today we did add eggs, but you don't have to. You could do spinach. We did avocado. I'll show you that in a minute. We'll talk about it. But the quinoa is a great higher protein grain. All the grains are going to give you a little bit of protein, but quinoa is definitely higher. And then savory muffins. You could add eggs or you could make them without eggs. There is an egg alternative that you could use, or sometimes you can make them with applesauce being an alternative, and that still gives it the moisture. They're a little bit of a different consistency, but it's going to give you the protein or the consistency that it'll still work as a recipe. And then we talked about smoothie bowls, and then this picture that I have here on the slide is egg shashuka. It's super easy to make. You basically saute onions and tomatoes, and then you kind of let them cook down, and you make a little indentation, if you will, into those tomatoes, and you just crack the egg right in there. So that's a great idea too, to just include more vegetables. Super easy, one pot dish. You can put it on hard toast. It's a great alternative. Does anybody else have any alternatives that they use for breakfast that are some things that we haven't talked about so far? I love hearing your ideas of what you use and how it's working for you. And you can put it in the chat if you want, or you can raise your hand or even just unmute. Anybody have any ideas they want to share?
You know, I add, when I have yogurt or certain things, I will add chia seeds to it, mix it in, because that's got added benefits, and I think it helps balance out the sugar because it's got more fiber.
That's wonderful. And you add that to yogurt, or what do you add it to?
I do. I add it to yogurt, or if it's a certain dish, sometimes I'll add it in a salad. Sometimes I'll put it in a smoothie. you know, I guess that's what's coming to mind right now.
I love that. Thanks for bringing that up. I think we forget about seeds and how they can be so helpful. I talked about how you can put them in a parfait, but you can really add them to a lot of things. Hemp seeds, a lot of times people will use the hemp hearts, and that will be helpful to get some more protein. We're certainly in pumpkin seed season, so those are easy to roast and have as a great snack. Or pumpkin in general and pumpkin seeds are really good for prostate health. So that's good for our men viewers out there. And yeah, I love that idea. Chia seeds, that's great. You can make a pretty easy chia pudding, or overnight oats is a great idea too. So I think we're going to talk about that next, but let's switch over. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyone else have any other ideas? Well, just jump in if you have them. I feel like we all learn from each other. So the other ideas that we have on here are focusing a little bit more on protein again, and we want to make sure that we can add plain Greek yogurt. And today we have a recipe where we did do that. So that Greek yogurt is going to be about double the amount of protein that other yogurt has. So if we can sneak that in whenever we can, that'll be helpful. The nuts on the oatmeal and the peanut butter we've talked about, but how about rotating these options? So a lot of times people say, well, I have the same thing every day. So try to pick 3 or 4 things and see if you can't rotate them, because you're going to be getting different nutrition from different things. So the oats are really going to be great for your heart health. The eggs are going to be good because they're going to keep you full. The yogurt smoothie is going to be good for your bone health. So if you can try to alternate your different breakfasts, the other thing is it just makes it more fun too, because you don't get tired of the same thing. Now, if you are okay with having the same thing every day, I would suggest maybe on the weekends when you have more time, try to throw in some of the other things just to make sure we're kind of covering that rainbow and we're getting a little bit more of a variety for you nutrition-wise. So I hope that will give you some ideas. So a sample menu can be the Greek yogurt with fresh fruit, as we talked about, the oatmeal, the breakfast burrito, and then maybe, the egg shushuka one day or something like that. So on the weekends, like I said, if you can kind of alternate a little bit, then that'll be helpful. So what about portion size? So this is kind of the question we addressed in the beginning about having, just not overdoing it with the carbohydrates. So if you look at 3/4 of a cup of cereal, it's not a large serving. Now, you might have more than 3/4 of a cup of cereal. You may have a cup of cereal, and that's fine. But then we just don't want to overdo it throughout the day. And that's with an 1,800 calorie diet. So you may need a different amount of calories. That's when we suggest that you talk with your dietitian and figure out exactly how many calories, how many proteins you need, how many grams of protein you would need, because it's all individual. And just a side note, we are able to talk about general nutrition through the cancer centers if you call the dietitian and want to meet with us. And if you're not part of the Northwestern Medicine system, you can call Living Well as well, and they will get questions to the dietitians as well. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need individual help about a certain item. So the portions, we want to make sure we're not overdoing it with that added sugar, and we also kind of want to train our eyes to not overdo the portions that we're eating of kind of anything, really. Just kind of know where we're getting it. So sometimes it's helpful to kind of measure and see how much yogurt am I taking, how much sugar is in that yogurt, how much grains, how many sausages, that kind of thing. I usually suggest keeping the food on the stove and then just making a plate and taking it there instead of bringing the food to the table where you can kind of eat and you don't know how much it is. Now, in certain instances, for our patients that are in treatment, we're pretty much hoping that you're going to eat whatever sounds good to you, fitting in some protein. So in that case, we're not as worried. But again, nutrition is very individualized. So also, what does 3 or 4 ounces of protein look like? Is that 5 sausages or is it 8 sausages? So one good rule of thumb is kind of looking at the palm of my hand here. It's a little bit bright, but if you kind of look at the palm of your hand and it's like a deck of cards, that kind of thickness, that's probably about 3 or 4 ounces. That's going to give you, say, 24 to 28 grams of protein if you're looking at chicken or turkey or something like that at a breakfast time. So if we're watching our weight and trying to maintain a healthy weight, we want to just be careful with that kind of protein. So another thing you can do is make sure that you're including those fruits and vegetables, whether they're cooked or raw. It's not against the rules to have some fresh carrots at breakfast. You can have those throughout the day, but sneak in those carrots in, or you can have them cooked with your eggs or whatever works for you. But trying to fit in vegetables, if we're looking at 5 servings a day or 2.5 cups cooked, then we're really needing to kind of, occasionally branch into our breakfast time. So kind of watch the starchier vegetables. So that would be potatoes, corn, peas. Beans also have some carbohydrate, but they have some protein as well. So we usually kind of put them in the protein section, but we have to be careful if we're a diabetic and just monitoring our carbs. So those we want to make sure we're not overdoing, and those would count in that starchy section. So if we're having a breakfast that is potatoes and pancakes and a corn muffin, for example, we're definitely getting enough carbs and maybe all the carbs that we need for the day at that one meal. So just kind of keep an eye. Remember that color and remember that plate where we're getting half of our plate fruits and vegetables, 1/4 starch, 1/4 meat. And then it's really easy to add fruit at breakfast. So if we can try to add, even berries or melons. I love telling people about melons because a lot of times, especially in the winter, we hope to eat local if possible. We're definitely going to have higher vitamin C, higher B vitamins, but if we can't, having a melon, some people will say, well, I'm not going to spend $3 or $4 on one melon. But if we go to the snack section, we're definitely spending more money on our snacks and cookies and things like that. So just think of a melon as like a candy bar of nutrition. It's got a lot of potassium, it's got a lot of B vitamins, it's got a lot of magnesium, electrolytes, not to mention fiber, and it's beautiful. So that's another thing I think we forget to sneak in at breakfast time. A lot of times we're using berries. Berries are fine too. So this is just 20 years ago. This is what the portions looked like for those bagels that we're having at breakfast. So the portions used to be a lot smaller. If you think about a Chips Ahoy size cookie, that's what a cookie used to be when my grandmother used to make them. And now, at Panera, the cookies are a lot bigger. So we just want to make sure that we're not overdoing it. Sometimes I'll recommend getting the mini bagels and having both sides of a mini bagel because that's going to be much better. The whole grain ones are very soft and tasty. So that's a good idea. Or maybe having a half of, a pumpkin spice one or one that you really like and not overdoing it. If you're looking for more calories, then a bagel is higher in calories, so that would be a good idea to incorporate. So we have to make sure that when we're eating out, we're kind of knowing what we're getting and kind of watching the portions. Sometimes at restaurants, the portions are going to be double what we would have at home. So we want to kind of take that into consideration. If we're wanting those extra calories, great. If not, maybe cut it in half and take half of it home or, divide it right at the beginning so you're not eating that extra. So just kind of keep that in mind when you are going out. If they would give us a small portion, like what we're talking about, we'd probably talk with the manager and say, what's going on here? So I think the portions just kind of keep getting larger. So just something to be aware of. So then purchase fresh. We've talked about this a little bit. There are some markets that go throughout the winter where you can get microgreens and add those to sandwiches or even add them to your eggs at breakfast time. So you can do local. There are some farms that are doing vegetables as well, and we're still getting some of those locally if you can. So local is better. And I did talk a little bit about your vitamin C. If there's a long distance between the farm to the table, and sometimes we know it can be as many as 15 days. So if you do have that 15-day mark, we definitely know that some of the nutrients are going to be lost during that time, especially vitamin C, some of the B vitamins. If there's heat involved, there can be some different nutrient losses. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you can eat local, great. And if you can eat what's in season, that's also awesome. So right now we have the squash season, which is so beautiful. We have the spaghetti squash. If any of you have heard of delicata, that's a great way too. Chickpeas. Oh, I love that idea. What about chickpeas? Do they have a lot of carbs? Great question. They do have some carbs, but they also have some protein. So we just want to kind of balance that out. So if we're having that, we might have that that'd be great with spaghetti squash actually, because that's really low in carbs. So you don't want to have chickpeas and potatoes and rice and bread and you know, for some cultures that can be very different. You have to make sure that you're adding in some of those other vegetables. So, you know, cooking up some carrots and onions and peppers and having that with it so that you're making sure you're not overdoing it. Great question. Chickpeas, and for some cultures, chickpeas is one of the few proteins that they're getting. So we don't want to eliminate that. We definitely want to have that. Great question. So the root vegetables, those last longer, and you can get some of those now and they will last for 2 or 3 weeks really. Delicata squash, you can buy that now at like Trader Joe's and some of the stores, and that's one of my favorites. It's you can look it up, but it's red and green and it's about the size of a large cucumber. Super easy to roast and really delicious, but it's only about this time of year, so that's a good thing. But what a great idea. Why not have that for breakfast? That would be awesome. Acorn squash too, those would be good. You could make soup with any of those. And then, you know, it's okay if soup tastes good to you, have soup for breakfast. You can add a little milk to it and then you're getting some protein. You could add some nuts. That would be fine. Sometimes that's all we're tolerating if it's during treatment, and it's okay. So whatever works for you is fine. I think we need to just branch out. And then also, if you feel like you're throwing out produce, make sure that you, if you're not going to eat it in a couple days, freeze it. You can freeze bananas, you can freeze berries, you can freeze almost anything. So, so try freezing it, or you can puree it and freeze it like that and then incorporate it into a smoothie. So, you know, you don't always have to worry about things going bad if you can somehow incorporate that in. So fresh spinach is the same way, and we use spinach today. If you feel like the fresh spinach is going to go bad, cook it, freeze it, and then pull it out for a soup. It'll be delicious. So let's kind of summarize a little bit. Tips for meal planning. We want to add variety, and I think we've talked about a pretty big variety of different breakfast ideas. And there are a lot of websites you can go for some more ideas. So one is cookinglight.com. I love that. Check Living Well first, of course, but then after that, cookinglight.com, choosemyplate.org, which is the U.S. Dietary Guidelines. They have a whole kids section that has great recipes that are not just for kids. They're inventive, they're simpler, they don't have a lot of ingredients, but they're really tasty. So I would check that out. And then Skinny Taste is, there are some cookbooks called Skinny Taste. Cooking Light has some magazines that come out seasonally now. Those are some good ideas too. So just kind of check. There are a lot of blogs out there that have a lot of fun ideas. I think I also gave some more breakfast ideas to Living Well, so they're going to probably have those handouts on the website from the class. And then make meals easier to prepare. So you can do oatmeal in the crock pot. That's really cool. You can do beans in there too, and you can add those to eggs, or you could just have like a beans and quinoa bowl. That would be delicious. We're going to talk about a great quinoa bowl in a minute. Try overnight oats. Oh my gosh, there's so many ideas for overnight oats where you can add milk or yogurt and oats and layer nuts or chia seeds. Any of those ideas. Pumpkin seeds. You can add chocolate or mocha or coffee, or the list goes on and on. So that's a good idea. And then, plan for leftovers. Maybe you're going to have leftovers for breakfast, and maybe you have it on toast, or maybe you have, freeze in small portions so you can have it for later. So those are all some great ideas. And then plan for some nutritious snacks. So you can have dried fruit in the pantry, you can have nuts, you can use that either with your yogurt or with your oatmeal or whatever you want. So just kind of have things ready. Okay. So containers help too. They help you kind of plan. Some people like to plan for 3 or 4 days. You can get some interesting containers. I do have ball jars because I like to make jam. So the 8-ounce ball jars are a great way to make overnight oats. You can do 4 or 5 of those, and then I usually say 4 for leftovers. So 4 days is probably a good amount. So you can make some for several days, and you just pull them out when you're ready to go. Ziploc bags are not a bad idea. You can freeze berries in sections for smoothies. You could freeze, bananas or berries for oatmeal, and you could mix them all together, or you could have them separate. So just kind of think about your container and how you plan meals. So the recipes that I'm going to demo today are, or talk to you about, I'm going to kind of stop sharing here and let's see. You can still see me, I think. There we go. Okay, so there are 2 recipes that I have to show you. One is a quinoa bowl. And this one does have eggs, but you don't have to use eggs. So it has quinoa, it has avocado, spinach, eggs, and then some chives as a garnish. So it's a little bit green. When I was looking at it in the picture, they made the eggs so you could see the yellow yolk, and it was a little bit more colorful. But we don't want to do that if you're in treatment. So I went ahead and cooked. I poached them, but I cooked them through so that, but I think it still looks yummy. There are a lot of different textures. And we use some pesto on the quinoa, and we cook down the spinach so it's nice and fresh. And, you could always add like some paprika or red pepper if you wanted to give it a little bit more color. But it looks delicious, and it's kind of an inventive way to have a little bit different breakfast. So it actually looks really good for dinner as well. So that's one thing. I did want to show you too, a lot of people are, let's see if I can hold these closer. There we go. A lot of people are using these egg bites. They're like if you get them at Starbucks, but they also have them at the store. This one is like, it's called an omelet round, and it says, it's just got like an egg and red peppers, green peppers, onions, and yeah, so this is a quick alternative if you aren't feeling like cooking, or if you're not feeling up to going into the kitchen. You could just microwave these. They have 15 grams of protein for this whole container, so that's pretty good. It's probably got at least a couple of eggs in there. And then these are some savory muffins that we made, and let's see if I can get the light on that a little bit better. So you can kind of see a little bit better there that we have some fresh spinach. They've got some turkey sausage, They do have a little bit of cheddar cheese and chives, and boy, they do look delicious. So that's something that's a little bit different than something that we normally see at breakfast, but they have that turkey sausage and cheese and eggs, so they would be a good alternative for giving you a little bit more protein at breakfast time. And you can freeze these for sure. So you could make them ahead and freeze them and then just pull them out as needed. Now, if you aren't eating eggs, you could probably make these in a different way using applesauce or some other type of emulsifier to get them going. There are so many recipes out there that are on vegan websites that you could find, so you could just look for an egg alternative. But I like the savory muffin idea because I feel like it's quick and easy. A lot of times people say they don't have time to cook in the morning, so popping one of these in the oven or in the microwave is kind of a good way to do it. All right.